Hi, everyone. This is Ramatu Mohammed, the parent coordinator for the IDEAL program at Center for Leadership in Disability. Welcome to once again our parent webinar series. Today's webinar is getting started with GPRA, and we have Karla Wade and Lynn Dominy from the Georgia Vocational Rehab. They're the ones that are going to present this webinar. So a little bit about me is I'm a parent too of children living with disabilities. I've been working with Georgia State Center for Leadership in Disability for the past 5 years, and I am your webinar moderator / host. Just a little reminder before we start, we still have a couple of webinars coming up. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to have a webinar on supported decision making by Dana Lloyd from the Georgia Advocacy Office, John McCarthy from Fellow SARTAC, and Joanne McCarthy. She's the parent / communication partner and support for John. Do sign up if you haven't. It's going to be an interesting webinar. So a little bit about our presenters. I'm trying to share a screen that has the information in it so that you could have a view while I tell you a little bit about them. So GPRA is an excellent partner for families planning for the future for a young adult with disabilities. In this webinar, Lynn Dominy, she's the GPRA Service Area Manager, will be joined by Karla Wade. She's the GPRA Education Program Specialist to give parents information on how to get started with GPRA. The topics will include required documents, the intake process, and the recommendations for a successful collaboration. So let me dig in a little bit and tell you some information about Karen. Lynn Dominy has about 30 years experience in rehabilitation. She has a master's degree in rehab counseling from UGA, and she's a certified rehab counselor and case manager and a nationally certified counselor. She has worked with VR for 24 years in various roles and is currently the service area manager, providing supervision of 3 metro Atlanta counties. Karla Wade. Dr. Wade has been an educator of students with exceptionality since 1982. She is currently an education program specialist for GPRA and was previously an academic transition teacher at the Academy for Inclusive Learning at Kennesaw State University. In 2013, Dr. Wade retired from a 30-year career in public education, where her last position was transition specialist. She has worked as a classroom teacher and a vocational coach. She is co-author of From the Classroom to the Workplace, as well as she has 2 ebooks, Strategies for Success and Inclusion Post-Secondary Preparation, Book 1 and 2. Her consulting work with publishers and universities has resulted in worldwide travel, most recently to the Middle East, where she consulted with special needs programs. Dr. Wade has been honored to serve as on the advisory board of the Kennesaw State University Academy for Inclusive Learning and Social Growth, the Accessibility Advisory Council of Cobb County Transit, and the Georgia Council for Developmental Disabilities Transition Task Force, and the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Consortium. She is happiest when helping families, programs, institutions, and cultures recognize and value individuals of differing abilities. So a little things to note. During the webinar, you could type in your questions in the Q&A box, and we're going to get to them at the end of the webinar. So if you bear with us at the end of the webinar, we're going to go ahead and answer your questions. So, okay. I'm trying to get the webinar up and going. So, welcome, Karla and Karla Wade and Karen Dominy. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Thank you very much for that great information. This is Karla Wade. So I'm going to begin you all with a quiz because my background is in education, and so I cannot start anything without a quiz. So this is a true or false quiz. So I'm going to invite everyone who's on the call with us today to answer these questions in your mind, true or false. We are very fortunate that Lynn Dominy is on hand to give us the answers. So your questions are these. First, true or false, GPRA can't pay for college, only for work training. So Lynn, is that true or is that false?
Hi, everybody. This is Lynn. The answer to the first question is false. VR looks at several paths toward employment. Many people, we're all very individual, take different paths. One path toward getting a job is indeed training, just like the training in inclusive post-secondary program.
Oh, okay, so that was false. Well, let me try the next question then, Lynn. So true or false, GPRA pays the same amount to everyone for going to college. Is that true or false?
The answer is false. The reason is sort of back to everybody being very individual. Colleges themselves are very individualized. The amount that VR can possibly pay toward training includes several factors. One example would be the college cost. Some colleges are more expensive than others. Some are private, some are public institutions. Some even aren't in the state of Georgia. VR does look at family income, and we'll have slides a little later on getting into that a little bit more. And VR also uses a fee schedule when considering how much we can pay toward colleges.
Oh, so that answer is also false. All right, one more question then. Lynn, is this true or false? The only information that GPRA needs is your young adult's desired college major.
Keeping with the trend, this answer is false. In fact, I think this is really important for anybody listening to this webinar to know from beginning to end, VR, the first thought in our mind is the vocational goal. We look at someone's vocational goal and then work backwards. What does it take to reach that vocational goal? What services, if training is needed to reach that goal? What type of training? Where? So everything we do is very important to, and you'll hear us ask questions probably every time we meet with your young person about your vocational goal.
Interesting. So, Lynn, tell us a little bit about the purpose of GPRA.
GPRA, just very quick little history lesson, has been around since World War I. We actually are coming up close to a little bit after World War I. In a nutshell, we exist to assist people with disabilities to work. On the PowerPoint, you'll see an expansion of our vision and mission. It's about the people we serve. We want Georgia to be the best of all the VR programs in serving people with disabilities, helping them reach employment goal, and with that, independence. So our mission, employment and independence for Georgians with disabilities, and our vision, every Georgian with a disability can work and live independently. We truly believe anybody who wants to try to work deserves a chance to work.
So this slide we borrowed from our friends at the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Consortium. Since 2009, the number of inclusive post-secondary schools in Georgia has been growing. Currently, there are 9, Kennesaw State University, Georgia State University, East Georgia, State College, Columbus State University, Georgia Institute of Technology, the University of Georgia, Albany Technical College, Georgia Southern University, and the University of West Georgia. Each of these programs will have a different focus. They will have a different personality, just like the programs for typical students. The inclusive post-secondary programs will all be different. So we absolutely encourage everyone to explore each of the programs and see which one might be the best fit for you. So with that information, Karen Lynn, how can GPRA help people who are interested in inclusive post-secondary education?
There are, in my opinion, many, many ways we can help. We definitely have training and become, through our training, experts on careers and understanding the labor market. So we can help your young person. Maybe at the moment they don't know what type of job they want to do. We start with them, helping them with our information and some services, perhaps an evaluation, come up with a job title that really matches their love, their passion, their abilities, their interest. We have in Georgia, we're lucky to have a strong assistive technology branch within the agency. Some states don't have this. Actually, many states don't have this. We have coworkers who are experts at modifications, software, computers, vehicle modifications, things like that. We also ultimately want to help someone go to work, so we can provide that assistance, whatever level of assistance is needed for someone to get research, find a job, and then of course maintain that job.
Good, excellent. On this next slide, you will see a very broad overview of the process for getting started in VR. Fortunately, we have Karen Lynn here to talk us through specific steps, but the first step is to obtain a referral. Now, students who are still in high school can even obtain this from the folks at their school, maybe the teacher, maybe a counselor, maybe a VR counselor that's there, or young people can refer themselves. There is a website, the General GPRA website, where you can find a number to call and initiate a referral. The next thing we're going to look at is the intake interview. And talk about what documents you might want to bring to that and what talking to a counselor will be like. The next step after that will be establishing eligibility, and we'll talk about what records they would want to review and perhaps what evaluations might be possible during that step. And then lastly, we'll talk about the individual work plan and what that entails. So Karen Lynn, on the next slide, will you start telling us about this process?
Yes, so this one's a little bit more detailed, very similar to the previous slide, and I'm going to insert information about what the VR counselor is doing during this time. So your young adult has applied. We have federal rules that we follow. And one rule is that we need to determine eligibility of someone within at least 60 days. Let me say that's not our goal. Our goal is one day or immediately. We don't desire to lengthen that process, but that is how it's established for us. You'll hear in our slides coming up about the interview process, things you and your young adult can do to help us shorten that time frame. We usually face barriers in determining eligibility when we write off and ask outsiders, say a psychologist or a medical doctor your young person sees, for records. Those offices don't always respond immediately. So we'll talk in a little bit about how you can help us with that. Once someone is determined eligible, our next immediate phase is plan development. We're looking at what services are needed to help this young person reach this vocational goal that we've decided on. VR calls that a period of needs assessment. And again, federally, a time frame that is mandated is to do that within 90 days. Again, it's not our goal to be 90 days. We hope we already have a lot of records that give us some good information to feel capable of writing a plan with services to reach that vocational goal. So then service, the bullet for service is when that plan is signed. We have put things in a plan a lot like a contract. It's actually called an IPE, not to be confused with an IEP. In Voc Rehab language, IPE stands for Individual Plan for Employment. We provide services in that plan and come to a point of your young adult becoming job ready. At that point, we assist with job placement, hoping to reach that employed phase. Once someone is employed, we're kind of back to a time frame. The federal rules tell us that we don't close immediately. We're not a Department of Labor type agency where they give a job to you and you get that job and that's success for them. To us, we want at least 90 days of working successfully, both from the employer's perspective and the young adult's perspective. We want to make sure this is truly a good job, things are going well. At that point, VR will close its case. Those last two bullets at the end have to deal with post-employment services, which is a possibility. If something pops up and your young adult needs a little something after we've closed the case, it's possible to provide some post-employment services.
Thank you. That was very thorough. So we talked at first about the intake, the meeting, the application interview. So we want to let you know about some things that you might want to be gathering up to bring to this first meeting. So the first thing we have on this list is a Social Security card. Carolyn, can this be a copy or does it need to be the original?
We prefer it to be the original, and here's the reason we ask for this at the very beginning, because most people know nowadays in the United States you have to prove legality to work. So we like to begin working with people understanding that they'll need to meet the I-9 regulations of an employer once they do secure a job. So let's go ahead and have that ready.
Will you make a copy of it and then return the original to the family?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Insurance card, so information about any insurance they have. A state-issued photo ID. Now, if you don't have a driver's license, that's all right. The state will also issue at the same place where you get your driver's license, a photo ID. And that's something that they'll need for work as well. Correct, Carolyn?
Correct.
Okay. And then, okay, medical or psychological records. Carolyn, what kind of records would be helpful to bring?
I say anything possible that you have, we will go through them and sort and make copies, of course, of what will be useful to us. But examples could be the IEP from high school, the school psychological evaluation from high school. If your young adult sees any practitioner outside of a school setting, or they're older, they're no longer in school, such as a counselor, a psychologist, a medical doctor, those records, if you have them.
Okay, so anything that would inform the VR staff about how they are functioning and what might impact their ability to work.
Yes, and what the disability or disabilities are.
Mm-hmm. For eligibility. Okay. And then the most recent income tax return. So if they're under 24 years old, the family's income is considered. And if they're older than 24, they would bring their own income tax return.
That's correct. And I realize people don't always have to file an income tax return. I'm not a tax expert. I forget the reasons why, but you can go to the Department of Labor and ask them to produce the document that proves you have no wages for the past year. So if your young adult didn't file a tax return, you could do that.
Okay. And then the Social Security award letter, if they're receiving Social Security, correct? If
That is correct. If your young adult receives SSI, SSDI, and or it's possible to get both SSI and SSDI based on their own disability, then we need that benefit award letter.
Okay. All right. And then the work or volunteer history, including any community-based vocational instruction or school experiences, to let y'all know what the work has been, what they've been doing, and a list of medications to inform, and then contact info for any health or mental health professionals or therapists so that you can reach out to them and get more information if you need it.
That's correct. Yeah, if you don't happen to have those records yourself, then we'll be filling out a HIPAA form, a release of information, and asking the young adult to sign it for us to send that directly to that professional to get the records, because we're required to have documentation of disability or disabilities. And back to the one bullet on medications, just really everything on here, all these bullets, we want you to know it's not us being nosy. Every one of these pieces of information help us think in the future about what your young adult will need to go to work. Medications, important, because some medications have side effects or there's timing to them where perhaps an afternoon job would be better. Maybe there's a drowsy effect in the morning. So that's why we start at the intake asking about medications and really everything else that we've listed on here.
Excellent. Okay, so all of those things are things to bring to the interview. And then on the next slide, we're going to talk about information that you might be asked to share during the interview. So if we could look at the next slide. Thank you. Okay, Karen Lynn, demographics and emergency contacts. What kind of information would be important in that area?
This slide is meant to inform you more questions we'll be asking so you and your young adult can get prepared to answer them. Demographics, just the basics: address, phone number, emergency contacts. For us, an emergency is not so much a medical emergency, but it would be maybe the young adult's not answering the phone or a phone number has changed. Someone else knowing that person or related to that person. It could even be grandma. It could be a neighbor, whoever is important in that young adult's life that would be able to get information to them.
You want to be able to reach them. And then their experiences in high school, their grades, what kind of work experiences they may have had, what kind of classes they liked or enjoyed, any career classes or vocational classes that they took. Those would all be good information, wouldn't they?
It would be. And if you have it, a high school transcript, it contains all the classes that have been taken. That would be great.
And then medicines and treatment. We talked a little bit about why that would be important. And there it is again, work and volunteer history, any community-based vocational instruction, and oh my goodness, if you've already been employed, when and for how long? Super important.
Yeah, we'll be asking that. We'll even ask, why did you leave the job? What were reasons for leaving?
And it's okay to be honest there, right?
Oh, definitely. We don't want to repeat. If something was a bad experience, we don't want to repeat it. So be very open and honest with your VR counselor.
And then interest, especially if you're inquiring about an inclusive post-secondary program. Why are you interested in that particular program? About that program, maybe it has a certain path of study that is really meaningful to you, and that's why you want to access that particular inclusive post-secondary program. And what career do you wish to pursue, and what classes might they have that could support that? So we're asking you to do a little homework on the front end, find out about what kind of classes and supports are offered within that program, and then share with us why you're interested in that.
And Karla and I want to let you know that it would be great if you maybe practice with your young adult these type of questions and the answers to them. We want, and we know that you also desire for your young adult to be as independent as possible. So starting at this point with the VR is a great way to begin practicing those skills.
Good. Okay, on the next slide, Karen Lynn, we're going to ask you to talk a little bit about that confusing document, not the IEP, but the IPE, the Individual Plan for Employment.
Okay. You may hear your counselor call it a work plan. They may call it an IPE. They may call it a plan. As I indicated at the very beginning, we really start with that work goal. So the vocational job goal desired will be listed there. The VR program, and many other states too, by the way, uses the ONET, and we'll have information a little later on about that you can go ahead and go on and do a little research yourself. The work goals in the ONET are broader job titles because it's impossible to have a book or an internet site big enough to list all the individual job titles that each company organization has. So a customer service rep, as an example, might represent a cashier at a grocery store. On that IPE, we're going to list objectives. And then underneath objectives will be each service that's needed to reach that work goal. You'll also see a funding source, and we'll talk about VR's financial need requirements. If VR's paying for it, it will say VR. If the young adult fully is paying for it, it will say that. And then sometimes there's a cost share. Both could be paying for it. And it's important to know, just like all of us as people, each plan will be very individualized for each client. Even someone wanting to go to the same school, and perhaps even someone wanting to get the same job goal, you still may see different services because people are different.
Karen Lynn, I have a question about the individual plan for employment, the work plan. Is, once you've written it, is that set in stone, or can it be changed?
It definitely can be changed. We call that amendment. We must, at a minimum, VR counselors look at the work plan once a year, but we will look at them more often as needed. Maybe a vocational goal needs to be changed because your young adult has gotten into the school, begun going out on internship sites, and find out they really didn't like that job title they thought they were going to like. We can amend a lot of things on the plan, and that's definitely an option.
Thank you. Thank you for clearing that up. All right, let's talk about financial eligibility. So the looking at the eligibility, one of the most important pieces is that we'll need a copy of the income tax. Now, different income tax forms, 1040, 1040A, 1040EZ, all of those are names of tax income tax forms, we need the most recent one of the parents, or if the young person has filed income tax, that one too. And we want to talk about any disability related expenses. So examples of those might be orthotics, might be special wheelchair things, or something that you might use to modify your vehicle. All of those could be disability related expenses. And that Social Security Disability Benefit Award Letter, we talked about that a bit, if you're receiving Social Security, SSI or SSDI. So all of those things are looked at. And then here's that term we talked about before. Some services are cost shared. Karen, Lynn, could you expand a little bit about what cost shared means?
So the VR program has a chart of amounts of money allotted for an individual and then for a family size. That's why we're looking at the tax form. It'll have how many people are financially interdependent within that family, as listed on the tax form, is told to the federal government. And depending on how many resources are coming into the family financially, as listed on the tax form, we can subtract from it the disability related expenses. We have a resulting figure, and then we place that resulting figure in a chart where it says VR can pay up to 100%. So sometimes, even if money is listed on the tax form, there are resources in the family, the result still is VR paying 100%, and it goes down each percent all the way to 0. So it's sort of a sliding scale. We definitely let you know. We fill this form out, we share it with you. In fact, it gets signed by your young adult, so there's no surprise as to where that individual falls on the cost sharing document. It's important to know on the slide, we're asking for tax forms or Social Security Benefit Award Letter. If your young adult gets SSI, SSDI, or both, based on their own disability, we don't need the family tax form, even if the young adult is under 24.
So be sure and bring that in.
Yes.
The services that VR provides are, of course, dependent upon the availability of program funds within vocational rehabilitation. So that's something to be aware of, and the counselor can let you know about that. All right. On the next slide, I wanted to talk a little bit more about possible services that GPRA can offer clients. Carolyn, would you talk a little bit about vocational evaluations?
Sure. So this is a unique thing where we will outsource to a company, to a person who is an expert at doing vocational evaluations to help your young adult select a vocational job goal, or maybe confirm that this is a great job goal for them. Vocational evaluations usually consist of a one-day meeting with someone, taking some paper and pencil tests, but not all. And even though some paper and pencil tests are not all pass or fail. Interest is an example. You don't fail an interest test. Your interests are different than my interest, and it just kind of helps your young adults see where more of their interests are. To me, as a vocational counselor, also as important where their interests definitely are not. I really look at both sides of that equation. What are you definitely not wanting to do? It also takes into account aptitudes, general ability, so academic. There might be a little spelling component, math. You don't really pass or fail. It just lets us understand what accommodations you may need in school, and of course, eventually on the job. Personality test is another type of tests given during a vocational evaluation. And all of these are combined together. The evaluator, who is the expert at doing this, synthesizes that information, and at the end of the report makes recommendations, recommends services, and also recommends job goals to consider.
Counseling is another really valuable service. Quite often, young people approach college age and they don't quite know what they want to pursue as a career, or they might have some unrealistic vocational goals. They might have some unrealistic goals that they're interested in pursuing because that's all they've thought of. The service of counseling is really a great way for young people to, in a guided way, explore not only what their interests and aptitudes are leading them to, but also what kind of jobs are possible and what kind of jobs may be coming that weren't even existing 2 or 3 years ago when they started thinking about what kind of career they wanted.
All right, on our next slide, I'm going to talk real quickly about assistive technology evaluation. As I mentioned toward the beginning, we're unique that we have a really great and strong technology arm to GPRA. We call on them to evaluate your young adult and let us all know, the young adult, the VR counselor, the family, of course, if your young adult wants us to share, what might help them in their coursework, so in their schooling, and ultimately on the job. There is so much out there. I'm amazed. I'm not a technology expert myself, so I always enjoy reading the reports because I find out something new every day. It can be simple and free. We're not necessarily talking about things that cost thousands of dollars. They can give us all good advice on maybe structuring the coursework. There are wonderful resources that are contained in our phones nowadays that are free, technology, disability related. And even if there are some minor cost to some items that would be really helpful to your young adult in succeeding in that class, making a good grade, and on the job, we certainly can consider that.
And then we want to talk about training. So training, getting prepared to go to work. Inclusive post-secondary education can be considered a training program, especially because internships and work experiences are included within the coursework. On-the-job training could also be an aspect of a service supported by GPRA. Independent living skills, those skills that you have to be able to work, like being able to support yourself at home, make yourself breakfast so you can get to work, tell time, get your work clothes together and keep them clean, things like that. And then work adjustment training, training to help you get along perhaps with other people at the job, a boss or a coworker. So all of those can be services that are supported by GPRA. Now, everyone's individual and the services are individualized, and each of these services must be approved by the counselor, and those are services that would appear on that work plan.
That's correct. And we have just listed, in the essence of time, we have just listed 4 possible, and you see possible underline. There are others, but even with the 4 that are listed, ultimately every individual is not going to get all 4. It's going to be a group effort deciding what is best for your young adult.
So what happens next? Well, go ahead and apply to GPRA. Now you can go ahead and apply in high school. We encourage thinking about the closer to the end of high school as you're planning to transition out, but be thinking about that, because as you saw, it's a bit of a process. It takes a little bit of time to process everything. Prepare for that intake appointment. We cannot stress how important it is that your young adult attend this intake appointment. Lynn was talking about the possibility of practicing a little bit beforehand, giving that vital information. As much as you can empower your young adult to speak for himself or herself, that will be a great thing to prepare them. Next is the eligibility determination that Lynn talked to us about on that timeline, and then possible evaluations. And then after those happen, the work plan is written, and services can begin after the work plan is signed. Lynn, I have to ask you, who signs this work plan?
It is going to be your young adult, unless guardianship is involved, of course. That is legally respected, and it'll be the person that has guardianship. But ultimately, the reason your young adult must attend this appointment, the reason we want you to practice ahead of time, is it's their life. I know it's your baby, I understand, but they're a young adult. They're going to be experiencing the world and chronologically getting older, so we want to begin to empower them to advocate for themselves. So we'll go over the plan with your young adult and be asking them to sign it and make comments on it if they want to.
So we remind everybody that it's a process. It's going to take a minute to for all the pieces to come together. So just know that. We want to talk next about a success story. And on this next slide, we want you to see the components of this success story. So I'm going to tell you the story, but I want you to be watching for these different components. So the first component is that there was a work goal that was established. And then what came next was that the IPSC program established and connected this student with training courses and internships. And then there's a graduation, and after graduation, successful employment. So on the next slide, see this success story. So Layla is not her real name. She came to her IPSC program as a self-professed foodie. She had been a GPRA client since high school, and her job coach had already helped her get part-time jobs in both fast food and sit-down restaurants.
Layla's goal that the VR counselor chose to put on her work plan was food preparation worker. That code you see is the ONET I referenced, and there's the internet site for the ONET, which is America's list of job titles that are possible in the American economy. It's important to know, you remember one of the previous slides, we said possible evaluation. On Layla, we didn't feel we needed to do that vocational evaluation. The reason why is she already had a part-time job in a restaurant type field. She expressed interest in doing it. We went with that and felt comfortable in choosing that job goal for her, with her.
Now, in her IPSC program, she audits several classes that are offered by the Culinary and Professional Foods Department. Her internships include a semester working with the master pastry chef in the college dining hall. Her other internships were also related to food serving, food preparation. After graduation, with the help of her job coach, Layla is hired by a different college that's closer to her family's home, and she's working in the dining hall there. She's working full-time with benefits. And after about 6 months on the job, what happened, Lynn?
She was so good. Layla is an excellent employee that this institution gave her a promotion and a raise because she had such good training in culinary and showed them her work and what a good worker she was. So she's on a path to full-time, higher salary, full benefits, and working on placing money for her retirement. We're very proud of Layla.
We sure are. So we want to give y'all some tips for best outcomes. So one piece is good communication. We're encouraging you to help prepare your young adult to call and check in with his or her counselor often. We recommend at least every 3 months, but Carolyn, if there's a problem, I think they should report it right away.
Absolutely. Minimum every 3 months. That's just truly minimum. If something necessitates it, once a week until that issue, that problem, or that question or sets of questions happens. We have some examples of, these are actually real life issues or problems that individuals encountered.
But the names are changed. So Bill, fall semester, he got into that class and discovered he does not like sports management. Now, his work goal on his plan is personal trainer. What to do? He wants to change his goal.
So this is where VR wants to step in. So Bill calls us and tells us, as I said previously, what someone does not like is very important to a VR counselor. It has meaning to us. And truly, everybody, those of us that went to college, I changed my vocational goals. So this is not an uncommon example, because you get into the classes, you get into math, and you don't like it. So with some career guidance, the vocational guidance and counseling, perhaps some testing, the evaluation. I'm sorry, I say the word testing. That's usually a turnoff. It's more of an evaluation because it's not pass or fail. We helped Bill come up with a different job goal that he was happy with.
So he's not stuck in that job goal that he decided he didn't like.
Correct.
All right, Carolyn, what about this next example? So after graduation, Susie got a great job in an office. Her job coach arranged for her to have special screen reading software. So everything was going fine until the company updated their computers. The new database is not going to support this software. She's afraid to tell anybody. She needs some help advocating for needed accommodation.
So Susie calls us and lets us know this is certainly a big issue and maybe needs some help with self-advocating. We can practice what to say to her boss. Really, truly, if needed, with her permission, we can even talk to the boss ourselves and advocate. This is where we perhaps would involve our Assistive Technology department again. They know more about the company's software, the screen reading software, how to make them compatible ultimately, or they might make a different recommendation, a different type of software that would be compatible. Ultimately, we want Susie to get that reasonable accommodation that helps her work successfully.
So maybe just the practice of putting your counselor's name and phone number in your smartphone, and maybe setting a reminder on the calendar to call regularly, but to call if there's a problem right away.
Yes.
All right.
On the last slide is contact information, our email addresses. Y'all are welcome to email us with more questions. And now Dr. Muhammad we have some questions that have been asked.
Okay, thank you so much for such a thorough presentation, Karen, Lynn, and Karla Wade. So let's hop onto the questions now. Um, we have two questions. So it's this question is by an anonymous attendee, and they're asking, what exactly is the difference between an IPE and an IWP?
I am so sorry. I don't know what IWP is. I'm taking a guess. There is an independent waiver program.
Could the person that asked the question please type in what you mean by IWP, please? I think it will clear it. Let's not assume. Oh.
Could it be independent work?
Okay, we can move to the next question just because I want us to answer exactly what the person is asking. So
Sure.
the next question says, at what point in the process does the CCIR occur? On these acronyms.
We are with you. We also don't know what the acronym CCIR is. We would love to have some expansion on what CCIR means.
So please, if the person that asks the question can type in the meaning of the acronyms so that we can really answer it correctly and not assume we know what it means. And also for the benefits of the rest of the people. Okay, so individualized work plan, maybe. Somebody is suggesting.
Then it's the same thing, and I think you will find VR and other agencies. We do use a lot of acronyms, and I apologize for that. So someone may have called it an IWP, your Young Adults Individualized Work Plan. That is the same, in my opinion, as an individual plan for employment. It's just their acronym for it.
So we're waiting on the meaning of CCIR.
Dr. Mohammed, we see in the chat that there is a question as well.
Okay.
It says, what if the student has part-time work in high school and has a different or additional work goal for a career, working in a grocery store in high school and wants to go to college to develop a career as a photographer?
Our answer, vocational rehab, is that it's perfectly fine. We understand people, a student or an adult, maybe has to work to get some money, or perhaps they're working for the experience and also the money. Everybody works for the money. So it is thoroughly fine if they're doing a job for that reason, but say, I'm doing this to get some work experience. My passion is photography. That's allowed. We will investigate going down the road of following the job title of photography.
Okay. So there's another question that says, can you tell us what Roosevelt Warm Springs is?
Yes, we can.
Sure. Roosevelt Warm Springs is part of the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. I love history, and I am so proud that we have Warm Springs in our own state. There's only 7 total programs in the United States like it. A lot of them are named after presidents, actually. Warm Springs provides an array of comprehensive services. Sometimes people desire to take that path toward employment. At Warm Springs, they can get training on independent living. It's possible to get information on driving, maybe even training on driving. There is a whole behavioral health department. So if someone needs some counseling or maybe involvement in that area, that's available to them. There's a wonderful gym. So recreation is important. And ultimately, why someone goes to Warm Springs is to get work training. So they also assist with getting work training, and they have educational training programs. I believe they're all at the certificate level, but that can be provided there also.
So another question says, can you give information on the differences between Warm Springs versus Cave Spring services?
Sure. They're both part of GPRA. They do the same thing. I would say the differences are two: location. Cave Spring is northwest near Alabama. Warm Springs is southwest, also on the Alabama side. Another difference is size. Cave Spring is smaller. They both have been around many, many years. Cave Spring was born to originally serve those with deafness and hard of hearing. Warm Springs, as kind of back to the history everyone knows, was born with President Franklin Roosevelt and his experience with polio.
Great, thank you so much.
And if somebody were interested in finding out more about those, would they talk to their VR counselor?
Definitely talk to your VR counselor. You can find information on the VR website, which is gvs.ga.gov.
Okay, nice. There's another question. It says, is it possible to get support at the Shepherd Center for driving through GPRA?
It's possible. I would say that's that possible underline. It's going to depend on your young adult, the information. Shepherd is a vendor. They are a company that works with VR and our fee schedule in evaluating someone's ability to drive. In my understanding, we all know they're experts on those with paralysis, head injury, and multiple sclerosis. So I believe they prefer cases where that's involved because that is their expertise. VR also has other companies like Shepherd that does driving eval should Shepherd not be an option.
Great. Any more questions? Because we're coming to, oh, I didn't know there are more. Okay, so can VR provide services for independent living while the student is still in high school and the student's goal is to enroll in a post-secondary inclusion program?
Well, it might be possible. What I would say is definitely speak with the VR counselor. There are services that VR collaborates with the local school agencies to provide. You may have heard them called pre-employment transition services, or pre-ETS. So that would be something between the VR agency and the school. But for specific services directly to a student, they would need to be a VR client. So usually those pre-ET services are group services.
Okay, thank you so much. There's another question that says, I've always been told that Cave Spring is better for those that need more focus on independent living skills than Warm Springs. Is that perhaps because it is a smaller program?
You know, I actually have not heard that, but I like your supposition. It is smaller. Warm Springs is a bigger campus. You have to get up, get to the cafeteria on time, or you don't eat. And the buildings are farther away, so you have to be able to manage your time. I'm eating, I have 5 minutes to get to class, I need to finish eating. Where Cave Spring is truly smaller, so perhaps it would be better for someone that needed to practice more on those skills.
Okay, so a final question. This is a little personal. The person said, my son is in high school and on the diploma path. He does not get any career training at school. This summer, GPRA funded his attendance at a work program over the summer. What can GPRA help with during the school year?
This summer program sounds like it might have been a pre-ETS program. So it may be that there are some services that the GPRA and the school can work together to provide. That would be different for every school and every VR But what I would recommend is to go ahead and contact the VR office, especially if your son is close to the end of his high school career, and talk to them about whether it's time to open an individual case with VR.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen, Lynn, and Karla Wade. This has been very, very informative. I believe we all learned a lot, and we've had some of our questions answered or clarified. It's already time for the webinar to be over. I just wanted to inform our audience that we are going to have the supported decision-making webinar coming up in 2 weeks. Same time on a Wednesday afternoon, 12 noon. If you have any additional questions or need for clarity, please, you could email. You have the emails up here on the screen. karenlyn.dominy@gvs.ga.gov, and karla.wade@gvs.ga.gov. And I think someone popped one question. We would see if it needs answering. Wow, no, I think it's just a thank you note. Okay, so thank you so much for being part of this webinar. We do hope you look out for our email. It will have a short survey, just about 2-minute survey about the webinar, what you think, if you have any suggestions of any more topics you want us to cover. It's going to continue, is a bi-weekly webinar. I will also upload the recording. We've had some glitches in uploading the previous ones. If any of you had been on the previous one, we apologize about that. But we're going to right now, everything has been sorted out. It has some glitches with the website. But I'm going to upload the recording and the PowerPoint presentation. And you're going to receive an email, as I had mentioned. I would still attach the PowerPoint in the email so that you have it in the follow-up email post-webinar. Thank you so much for your time. Karen, Lynn, Dominy, and Karla Wade, thank you so much for the information.
Thank you.
I believe our parents really gained a lot from this. Thank you. And okay, yeah, somebody was asking if I would send the PowerPoint. So I'm going to send it in the survey, in the post-webinar email that you would receive from Zoom. And thank you so much for being part of this. Have a nice day.